once again, and welcome to another Doctor on Call. It is Tuesday evening, and that's what we do every Tuesday at this time. Well, this evening, we have a very special program for you. We do have two very special guests with us, and so we will be looking at cancer awareness. Of course, we will place some emphasis on nutrition and, of course, gastrointestinal health. All right. Dr. Nixon is with me as always, and also joining us this evening, Dr. Daniel Thomas and Miss Charisse Bristol. And so we welcome them, and we welcome you, our viewers of GBN Television 711, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and you, our listeners on K105 FM. Welcome. It's a pleasure as always. And of course, we trust that at the end of this program, you would learn quite a bit. And of course, you can apply that to improve your wellness. So that being said, Dr. Nixon, good evening. How are you doing? It's good to have you back. How are you?
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. I'm always happy when it rains, okay? So when it rains, you don't need to ask me that. I love rain. More rain, more food. No rain, no food.
And more rain, more food.
Honestly, and wash out some of the things. But the truth is, I'm happy that we are having rain. I know a lot of farmers have actually had to postpone their planting because of the late rains. But I think we're getting enough now. Not too much to cause erosion and flooding and stuff. So I hope we're able to use it. I need to borrow some sheep because the grass that has grown up in my yard, there's no way I can control that, including the spot that I wanted to plant. But let's make the best use of it. And while it rains, I want to remind people that we need to boil our water for drinking because it isn't exactly as clear as we'd like it to be. So this is a time when we get two things we spoke about last week: food, waterborne challenges, diarrhea and stuff. And those mosquitoes love one drop of water, and everybody all of a sudden feel time to proliferate, time to make more babies. So watch it for those mosquitoes. Let's make sure that we can, yes, use the water, but use the water smartly. Let's cover or store the water. But we still need to store some water, some of us, because of where we live and access. And the other things that there's a lot of road work. Please be cautious on the road. I'm tired of wondering if I'm going to be picked up by an undertaker on my way home or from work. Take it easy, guys.
Yes, indeed.
Take it easy. Please, especially now that it's raining and we have that heavy, slippery Tegwall wood. Mud in the streets, there's a greater risk of us having accidents on the road. So please, we all get there if we all follow the rules.
Yes,
so those
indeed.
Are the things we talk about apart from nutrition and preventing cancer and how we can, what we can do food-wise to make sure we don't get cancers.
Yes, indeed. And of course, also joining us, Miss Charisse Bristol. She's no stranger, but it's been a while since she's been on the program, and I'm really happy and excited to have her. Charisse, good evening, and it's a pleasure to have you back after a very long time. How have you been?
I have been good, Godfrey. Thank you for having us part of this program today. As Dr. Nixon did mention, and that I love that tagline, with this rain. So I am indeed happy for the rain as well.
Yeah, of course. It would help with our nutrition. I can understand why you're
happy.
But of course, I'm sure our next guest would be sounding the warning as well as it relates to what we put into our stomachs and intestine. Dr. Daniel Thomas. Doc, good evening. How are you, man? It's been a while.
Pleasant evening, Godfrey. It has definitely been a while. And as you say, it's probably about 5 years. Could be more because time flies.
Yes, it does. It's
probably more than 5 years. I would think it was before COVID.
Yes, you're right. So, yes.
It's actually before, it's longer than 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's very nice to be back.
Yeah, I need to start calling you more often. That's what.
Next time, Godfrey, I'll call you next time. I've been meaning to.
All right, so okay.
We'll definitely be in touch, and thanks for inviting me to the program.
Yes, indeed. So, folks, tonight we have a lot to talk about. We're talking nutrition, we're talking gastroenterology, and of course, Dr. Nixon is here. And I'm relying heavily on her to throw some, or to bowl some fast balls at Dr. Thomas this evening. But I want to start with Charisse. Charisse, cancer awareness, and when we speak of cancer, we know one of the ways we can minimize that as much as possible is through what we consume, because all of the things that we consume can be a sort of enhancer for cancer. As a matter of fact, in the news this evening, I heard that cancer remains the number one cause of death for the 5th year in a row. That is not good news. So, Charisse, let's start with you. Cancer awareness, food and nutrition. Talk to us about nutrition and, of course, cancer awareness.
Yes, so we at the council, we like people to understand that nutrition is important, and good nutrition is above important for everything that we go about our daily lives. And with cancer, as past before COVID has been the number one cause of death in Grenada, and past from 2022 to it remains the high. So just we had in 2021 COVID, you could say it just took over for just that bit. And we have to watch what we're eating. So we had a study done, and that study showed us what Grenadians are really consuming. And yes, we're seeing what's available, but now we have an idea of what they are consuming, and it's the highly ultra-processed foods that's putting them at risk for developing cancers, and the highly sweetened food products. So that's the highlight of the study that we picked up. Our people are consuming, and we did it on a scale. So on the scale 0 to 100, we had a mean score. So 54 was the mark number, with 100 being the perfect diet, and very little showed up on the 100. So we had people just in between, and we had some numbers lower. So we have to adapt a healthier lifestyle, making some changes, and it's all about discipline. So yes, you have the information, but do I have the discipline to engage now and make the necessary changes to put myself at a better overall health and well-being state that reduces my risk for many chronic diseases? It's all about discipline.
Right. Dr. Nixon, you have to jump in here. I'm sure you may want to add
For the 3rd consecutive week, my source of noise in my community has come on exactly as I started this program. So I think I'm being spited. I'm not being funny. It is ridiculous. Okay. So you notice I've been distracted when we started in the last couple of weeks. And again tonight, as I start this program, there's noise in my neighborhood. I don't know what's going on here. So, and as Charisse said, cancer has been the number one cause of death in our population, and probably in the last 10 years. And even though we still have a high incidence of diseases like cardiovascular diseases, cancer continues to hold the reign. And if we look at some of the things that we consume, some of the foods that are actually considered high risk for us developing cancer, it kind of almost forms our new diet. We have moved from a traditional diet of fresh fish, fresh meat from the market, and we've gone into highly processed and preserved foods. So instead of having fish, steamed fish broth, we have other things. Instead of having some beef, even if we buy beef or chicken, we're grilling and we barbecuing, and we using eating very charred foods that do, and I'm sure Dr. Thomas will speak about that, that do modify our GI tract and cause a lot of inflammation, and inflammation that actually leads us to having abnormalities in the function of our cells and eventually cancers. Some of these foods that we actually have access to cause us to have carcinogenous. In other words, they can generate the development of cancers. We know the processed food. All of us like ham and those foods that we get at Christmas, that are preserved, some of the preserved foods, sausages, etc. Ham, whatever ham. We have chicken ham, pork ham, whatever ham. They use nitrates and nitrites, which have been proven, because there has been a lot of research because of the high incidence of cancers. There has been a lot of research, and looking at the foods, we see that there are foods that we consume, and not us alone, but we talk about Grenada tonight. We see that a lot of these foods are actually linked to development of cancers in our community. All right. So as we go along, I guess we're going to mention, but the truth is, our diet has proven, and in relation to research, even though research has been done grossly, mostly in other populations, what we eat is not good for us. What we eat is shortening our lives. Might make you take away hunger now, but it's going to, at the end of the day, cause you to have challenges. Okay, the things we like I said, the smoked foods, eating too much red meat, the sugar. We've been talking about all of these things: sugary beverages, sugary snacks. The donuts and the other pastry and stuff, right? The trans fats, right? Margarine. What margarine? Those things are manufactured in a factory. The high fried foods, the packaged goods, all the things that we like to eat that have been prepared. Yes, it's the age of convenience, but it's also the age of us making it inconvenient as per our longevity, because we eat foods that are convenient to buy. They're not cheap. We talk about eating well is expensive. Eating those foods is not cheap. They do not give you any nutrients. They make your body not able to defend itself, because your immune system gets quite compromised, right? It gets suppressed, and they don't give you nutrients, and you buy more, and then you get fat. And we know that obesity is one of what has been proven in the research in the last 2 decades, and especially more recently, that overweight and obesity is one of the factors that predispose to the development of cancers. Alcohol, man, we love rum, okay? But alcohol targets the liver, and it targets the breast, and colorectal cancer comes, and especially cancer of the head and neck, the tongue, the throat, and all the rest of it. We know that alcohol contributes to that. And we talked about canned foods because of the compounds that are in there. The artificial sweeteners. A long time ago, we heard about remember when we decided that sugar was making us too fat? They started using things like saccharine. Okay, and we know that does make us. It does predispose to cancers. I'll tell you something. When we were doing the whole campaign against childhood obesity, some smart, not so smart companies that make sodas and sugar sweetened beverages decided that, since you say sugar makes the kids fat, we're gonna use artificial sweeteners. The World Health Organization has made it clear categorically that children are not to receive foods that are sweetened with artificial sweeteners, because these little bodies that don't even have any fully developed immune system, apart from all the crap we're giving them to eat, now you're going to give them another carcinogen. Those sugar sweetened, those non-sugar sweeteners that we know has been proven to cause cancer. So I'm telling parents tonight, and grandparents and nanny and friend and auntie and uncle who carry the kids out, that yes, while we quarrel about too much sugar sweetened beverage, it is worse to give your child drinks that have artificial sweeteners. As a matter of fact, the World Health Organization has caused it illegal to give children drinks and food that have artificial sweeteners. Let it stay here, okay? Because is one thing and another thing. More weight on queen sugar, as we say it. Okay, we put our children, really put our children at even a greater risk. And farm-raised fish. We've heard a lot of talk about tilapia and other fish that are raised in farms, even artificial salmon and stuff. That is good, but farm-raised fish, also the proximity that give them a whole lot of chemicals to keep them healthy. Okay. And there are a lot of contaminants that they get from each other, the animals get from each other. We try to make them fast, to grow fast. We give them all chemicals, and then we still give them, they catch things from each other, and we try to avoid it. And whatever chemical one fish excretes, another one can take in. So farm-raised fish, no. Tilapia, farm-raised salmon, no. Okay, fish come from the sea. Is a lot healthier. And of course, all of this, we're going to come back into details. Among all of it, we have to figure out what it is. We can talk about what not to eat, but we have to look at how do we promote safe choices of food that will prevent us developing cancers. Right. That is my quick summary.
Right. So let's bring in Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas, once we talk food, we're talking our digestive system. They go hand in hand. And we know that GI health, it has a lot to do with the overall functioning of our digestive system. What are some of the main organs involved here? And we're talking food and digestion and all of that.
Well, I must first say that Sonia is quite comprehensive in terms of coverage of the nutritional aspect and, the carcinogenic properties of the million, food of other consumed items. Mm-hmm. And all we can do is to try to avoid some of the things, or at least have them in moderation. Right? But, it goes through the mouth, and eventually it ends up in the end, after some of it will get absorbed and go through our other systems. Mm-hmm. So anything that that we consume and that is potentially hazardous over time, is little damage over time. It's not a one-off. That is just one day or 1 year. It's a cumulative effect. And coupled with that is our own sort of factors. You talk about obesity. Our own genetics. Some of us we have genetic or familial, tendencies to develop certain types of cancers or other ailments, and that side of it is something that is controllable. We can't change our genetics, but we can always change what we consume, and therefore, we can reduce our risk significantly by watching what we eat. But so once we consume it, the next step is to try to prevent things, and that's where the medical service sort of comes in of trying to prevent. So we're talking about sort of early detection, but the first thing, especially in a low income, low resource setting, is to prevent. Because if we have a huge amount of people that suffer with things, and we don't have resources to cope, the outcome is more disastrous than what it should. Dr. Nixon talk about certain World Health statistics, and whenever you talk cancer, the first thing comes to people's head is death. And tonight, we want to concentrate on sort of the GI, cancers. And though they are not the most common, even in the last couple of years, there are cancers that are much more prevalent than GI cancers. But when it comes to cancer death, colorectal cancer is, second only to lung. Mm-hmm. So it's something that, yes, it may not be as common as others, but if you do get it, your risk of death is much higher. So I sentiment Dr. Nixon's, statements and the Bristol input about the diet and what we consume.
Okay. Dr. Nixon, you want to jump in here?
No, I'd really love if Charisse would look at. No, not yet. I don't want to come in yet. I want us to really expand this because I have a lot to say. One of the things I want to say, however, let me say before I forget. And Dr. Thomas does mention, right, the genetic component. There's also an environmental component that enhances, in this case, makes worse, right, the possibility. But we don't have control, a lot of control over that. Certainly you have no control over the fact that your body is predisposed because that's what runs in your family. You have those genes that run in your body that you can't change. You can't take medication for it. You can't do chelation. You can't do anything. There's nothing you can really do, right? If your body has that great predisposition from a familial standpoint, right, to have a thing. But we have to remember, if nothing else, that what we consume, right, the food we eat, can either enhance the possibility or disenhance the possibility of developing cancers, right? And like I said, like we talk about everything, evidence-based, research, and research has proven, right, that yes, eating this kind of diet does increase your risk. Eating that kind of diet does decrease your risk. The important thing is for us in Grenada and our diaspora, and the people who listen to us every night, to understand that here are your choices. Right? Here is what X and Y does. We talked about a lot of the things. Processed meat. We eat a lot of processed meat. Salt beef, pigtail, right? Ham, sausages, tinned meats, etc. They use preservatives that we know, and as Dr. Thomas says, it's not eaten at one time, but some of us eat it very often and a lot. And we don't know what a genetic makeup is like. You may not have family that shows it, but you start to dig up them genes, they're gonna make things, unpleasant things happen to you, okay? So we kind of need to learn, and that's what I hope our population would understand tonight. Why is it necessary to eat a certain way, to consume or not consume certain foods, right? So that we can live longer. We know, for example, if we eat fried foods, sometimes you pass by that place where there's fried chicken, and the oil almost smells like poison, because they've used it a million times. Not only is it going to cause your cholesterol and your triglycerides to rise, but it's just like, hello guys, this is now toxic, please throw it out, okay? Even at home, you want to fry whatever, fish cake. And sometimes you use so much oil, you want to keep it, but it's not a fry fish cake on Sunday, next week, Sunday, the following Sunday. There comes a point when that oil, and preferably after you use it the first day, you should dispose of it. It's no longer. As a matter of fact, using those oils that have what we call seed oils that come from all different kind of seed, and those oils that come from manufacturing, like I don't want to call them canola and this vegetable and that vegetable, because I've never seen a vegetable with oil, but that we know, and we've been saying to our population it's not good for us. And because it's apparently affordable, it actually is costlier because they carry all these toxins by persistently burning them, right? Sorry, the noise starts again. By persistently burning them and using them, right? We put ourselves at risk for developing long-term and very serious and potentially fatal disorders.
Right. So, Charisse, let me just come back to you. What then, based on what Dr. Nixon has said and Dr. Thomas, what are the recommendations? And we're talking now in terms of nutrition.
Yes. So, thank you so much, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Nixon, for your valuable input here. And as Dr. Nixon just mentioned about the way people eat, and that is true. And with the reference with the oil, I recall we did a webinar speaking on the use of reusing oils in our kitchens, and not in just home kitchens, but in restaurants. And we, based on the research, we recommend that people don't use their oil more than twice. And when we did a survey, we're seeing people using their oil more than 3 times, and that's already it's developing some compounds there that put you at risk, so carcinogenic compound that can put you at risk for developing cancers, and not just one use but over time. Now, I didn't hear alcohol mentioned, but our consumption of alcohol is alarming. And with this research among youth in the Caribbean, that again is alarming. So we have to look what's happening. And we recommend from our dietary guidelines to avoid the consumption of alcohol. And in terms of, well, our homegrown foods, if we are taking time, the rain is falling now, which most of us are enjoying. Sorry for the areas that's flooding. But for many of us who are in our gardens planting, preparing the land, homegrown foods, they're the best. And minimal use of anything foreign agent, that is a better option to protect your health. And if you need support, you can reach out to the Ministry of Agriculture. They have extension officers that can provide some guidance in terms of where your planting distance, what foods you could grow together, that's companion planting, that you can reap maximum benefit of nutrients from the soil and even from each of the plants together. So when you have optimal nutrition and these nutrients are coming into your body and you have a strong immune system, as Dr. Nixon mentioned earlier at the beginning, the people whose system are compromised, we can be at a better level, have a stronger immune system that we can prevent us from even catching the common cold. That's just for an example. So you have people catching it so often. It's the way they eat, right? The environment, their lifestyle, and we can make the necessary changes. It's just looking at, so when you have an exam coming up, you do a revision of yourself, right? A deeper look. What do I eat often, daily? And you say, okay, these items, I'm not sure if they're healthy, but I can reach out to maybe the Food and Nutrition Council and get some support there. I'm not feeling so well. You reach out to doctors and you get an assessment. They probably send you for do some labs and see what's going on in your body. And you have the different referrals and we can assist you. So the help is there. The knowledge is here to share with you, and it's you to accept the public, right? And we can have a healthy nation, a productive nation, and we have a population that's majority, high population of productive age people. So do you want to always be sick from work, always in the hospital or at the doctor's office? Or are you visiting the doctor just to do a medical, general check, but not because you're ill?
Right. Dr. Thomas, we talking, of course, GI health, and we talking from the mouth, esophagus, stomach, intestines, liver, pancreas, and so on. All right. In terms of some of the foods mentioned that can create problems for us, let's talk about these organs in relation to their importance to our lives and the dangers that some of these foods, including alcohol, all this other food, can, the problems it can cause that can, create issues for us.
So normally, when you're talking about foods, it's usually used generally to mean food and drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so it's used very loosely, not just solid, but also liquids.
Right.
Yeah. And you can't talk cancer prevention without talking about alcohol consumption. So they're all into one pot. Yeah. We haven't sort of included, smoking, because it's not a food, but they alcohol and smoking tend to start together. But in terms of the risk to the GI tract, um, you know, alcohol, it can cause a lot of problem in the mouth, from just sort of general hygiene to actually disease state. In terms of the esophagus, the most common things are benign, changes. Everybody in the community has gas, but which is kind of loosely used. But what they get sort of reflux, disease, or just irritation of the esophagus. But in the long term, those are risk factors for developing changes in the lining of the esophagus and subsequent cancer. The risks are small, but the risk is still there. If you go down to the stomach, what we eat is important in terms of the health of our stomach lining and prevention of stomach ulcers. And we know that stomach ulcers has a higher risk of being cancerous. But again, with the advent of medicine and medication that can help to reduce acidity, the risks are small. So the most sort of common thing that in our community is more disease of the colon and rectum, and so one, they're more prevalent, and two, they are preventable in the sense that the first step is trying to reduce it from that point of view. But if you miss it at that stage, then you have another stage where you can try to detect things early. So there's a lot more focus on the lower part of the GI tract in terms of cancer prevention than the upper, and it's really because the lower ones they are more common, they are preventable, and the risk of death is high, is sort of higher. In terms of my experience here in Grenada and if not side, the cancers of the esophagus, a lot of them present late. Unfortunately for us here, most of them are linked to smoking and alcohol consumption, and therefore the type of cancers that they are and treatment required, we don't have available locally, which is really chemoradiotherapy, and the cost, not much people can afford to actually travel to get the treatment that they require, So it is probably even more important to try and prevent it, because if you get it, then there's not a lot that we can do sort of locally, quite adverse to the ones you get in the lower tract, because you can pick up the changes before they turn cancer and actually do something about it. And if they do, a lot of them are amenable to surgery plus or minus chemotherapy, which is available. It is not cheap as well, but at least it is more affordable than the treatment that you'll have to travel abroad for.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right, but also, Dr. Thomas, the pancreas is also mentioned as one of the organs that form part of the GI system, and we have heard of cases of pancreatic cancer. Let's talk a little bit about that. I don't know if, as it relates to nutrition and food, if there's any correlation there, but maybe you could enlighten us on that aspect of it.
Yeah. Almost every cancer, there's some correlation, with nutrition. But in terms of the prevalence of pancreatic cancer, I don't know what is our true figures, because to know your true figures, you have to have adequate data collection. And, we know that not everybody who die, there's a concrete, sort of cause of that. The pancreatic cancer, again, is one of those that have a very, very high risk of dying. The even in the first world countries, very famous, Steve Jobs from Apple, right? So, money wasn't an issue for him, but he died of pancreatic cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So in our setting, it's perfect. In the 9+ years that I've been back out home, and if my good patient is listening, I only know one person who was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, who survived, and it's still alive after quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, they die within a short time, either because of disease progression or because of difficulty in coping, and even the methods of doing some sort of procedure to make the last days more comfortable. It's not, what is available is far from what is desirable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something you would wish on your worst enemy.
Right.
We actually have a schoolmate of ours who succumbed to that in his 30s.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to mention name on the air, but there's somebody who went to school with us
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from IFE days.
Yep.
Who succumbed to that.
Right.
Yeah. So the risk of dying is very high. In terms of a specific sort of diet, I'm not aware of anything sort of specific. But most of the cancers, the nutrition and the carcinogenic aspect of it is very similar. And even with the pancreas, in terms of other organs that you could see is part of the GI tract, because in terms of how it's developed, you have the gallbladder, you have the liver.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they're not common. In terms of liver, most of the liver things that we're going to see here is because of some other primary condition. So it's what we call secondary or metastatic.
Right.
Yeah. So even sort of handling this is very difficult, because quite often chemotherapy alone does not sort of do the trick, and we do not have the service of a liver specialist or hepatobiliary surgeon. The closest one is Trinidad, and it's not cheap to access the service, but it's not impossible to have these services here. Hopefully, things might change in this future. We have to leave it hope.
Yeah. One other thing before I go back to Dr. Nixon, we know that in the gut there are a lot of bacteria that play a very important role. For example, they influence digestion, immunity, inflammation, all of that. In terms of what we consume, that can, or are there things that we consume that actually interfere with the proper functioning or prevents these bacteria from fulfilling their role to ensure our immunity is where it is supposed to be, preventing inflammation, and ensuring that the whole digestive process goes the way it is supposed to? Dr. Thomas?
I don't know if Dr. Nixon has new information on that, but in terms of bacteria, from the upper GI tract point of view, the only sort of known bacteria that has a link with carcinogenesis is one called Helicobacter pylori, or H. pylori for short.
Mm-hmm.
If again, I don't know who is listening, and some people, some of the things or the topic may hit home for some people, because I do have people who are H. pylori positive and had a cancer positive diagnosis. So there might be people listening, or relatives or friends of people listening, who kind of shaking their head at this point in time and say, okay, so a lot of the so-called gas episodes, we sometimes have to look into them because they might be HPLA related.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about what we eat, that's how we get it and we can spread it, to the people over the road. So some of the things Dr. Nixon alluded to earlier in terms of sort of hygiene, stuff where the rain falling, the water looks nice, don't forget to boil the water. So hygiene is one thing. Eating food from, the side of the road, so hygiene is a big thing.
Right.
And we can spread it, and we can bring it home, spread it to other people in our household. And, so it's important to diagnose this thing, treat them, and recheck that you actually get effective eradication and try to maintain.
Right. Dr. Nixon, you want to come in here and talk a little bit about that? Maybe you want to add to what Dr. Thomas just spoke of.
So we know that there's some foods that will actually damage the wall, like highly pickled foods. Those things that are a lot of brine and salt and fermented foods, right? The high sodium varieties, which actually break the GI lining, and they promote, not only do they promote bacterial growth, but they kind of create imbalance in the lining of the wall, right? It means that you just break the natural hemostasis of the GI tract, okay? You remove the things that are protective, right? And so you can have abnormal behaviors in the cells, in the lining of the GI tract as a result of constant consumption. We know, for example, right, one of the things we know, the Japanese who drink a lot of hot tea, hot tea, have an increased risk of stomach cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It's traditional, but we know that there's an increased risk of cancer. In our situation, I don't even remember, we spoke recently about us having our own cancer registry, which is getting on stream, so we can understand our own population, because I think there's nothing like having research-based knowledge to understand how your population behaves in light of XYZ. What do we have to ask our population? The same things. What does the diet consist of? We see somebody comes with cancer, whatever form of cancer. One of the questions you should ask, how do you eat? How much fruit and vegetable do you consume? Do you consume alcohol? Alcohol, it actually is have the same risk as smoking. That is established in relation to cancer. We spoke about this a lot of times, several times, at least half a dozen times on this program. The increased risk of breast cancer in young women who smoke. Do you remember that?
Yes, we did.
Right?
Yeah.
They find young women in their 20s developing breast cancer, and it's intimately related to alcohol consumption. So that is quite established. Unfortunately, we live in an environment where our young people are drinking more, they're smoking again, right? And when those two things come together, you do have some synergism. They kind of hold on to each other and behave like two bad, two gangster. They like to act together. It's like diabetes and hypertension, right? And so therefore we have to consider that the GI tract gets affected and your immune system gets compromised once this wall is broken down. Okay, it cannot control what bacterial growth, whether it's good or bad bacteria, whether you are now absorbing all the toxins that come out of charred foods, food that have too much salt, food that have too much trans fats, etc. The BPA foods, whatever cancer promoting compounds that exist in the food. If we break the barrier on the gastrointestinal wall, it is going to put us at greater risk. Hopefully we can figure out what happens in our population in the next 10, 15 years to make decisions, right? We already know that we have decisions on sugar consumption among our children. We also know that under 18, you're not supposed to drink it, but they give their children sour with rum and fruit cake and I don't know whatever thing else people make in their house that have alcohol that we give to our children, right? Who just developing, whose immune system is just being developed. So those are the things you're going to have to take into consideration as a population. What do we practice culturally from a gastronomic standpoint, from a nutritional standpoint, that puts our entire population, especially predisposes our young population whose immune system is not necessarily quite developed, right, to have cancer as a bad outcome for their health.
Okay, wonderful. Charisse, let me come to you.
Yes.
Now, in terms of maintaining a healthy gut or a healthy GI system, gastrointestinal system, let's break it down and go into some detail as to what habits. And we're talking here, nutrients now, right? In terms of food. What we should consume. What are some of the habits as it relates to our consumption patterns we should develop to maintain a healthy gut and avoid whatever cancers that could develop because of bad practices?
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Nixon, for allowing to us on the gut. And for that, we have the fruits and vegetables. And based on the dietary pattern of our people, the consumption is really low. And we see it is altering the good gut bacteria. And we have low fiber intake among our people. So you're having higher incidences of constipation, stool being backed up. They're having problems passing stools. And Dr. Thomas can mention the cancer of the colon there. We have foods. These foods, they are rich in antioxidants, and we need them to protect ourselves. And if we're having low consumption, we can gradually increase the intake over time. So we're not asking you have zero consumption right now a day of vegetables. Tomorrow you should not wake up and just pack vegetables on your plate. You can gradually increase it. So you can put, say, a half of a pot spoon on there. Then you can move to 2 pot spoons until you are half the plate should be filled with fruits and vegetables. Okay? Then we move to other important and vital nutrients and the protein. So we mentioned the highly processed meats. Let's stay away from them. And we can replace them with lean protein or plant-based. And the Mediterranean diet has been proven for many illnesses in terms of risk reduction and management. So this type of diet is really a plant-based style diet. So your protein will come from dried peas and beans, and you'll get your fiber from there, helping your gut bacteria. We look at the starches. Look at the starches of your diet now. Many of us would see that the starches we eat are simple carbs, and they're quickly absorbed by the body. And over time, with our lifestyle, we're not moving much. We're taking buses. We are driving from short distances to point A to B. They're so short. Why are you driving? So with that, the accumulation over time, we have a buildup of fat in the body because the sugar, if it's not being used, it's stored in the muscles, it's stored in the liver, and we have the issues. And this can even put stress on our pancreas. And that's what we see. We develop problems there with fast insulin resistance. We have obesity and developing cancer. We think of food, we take it lightly. And we shouldn't take food lightly like that. We should ensure that we are getting the variety. And we are from our 6 food groups. Ensure that you're eating the rainbow, let's say. And that rainbow should mostly come from your fruits and vegetables. If you're doing that, you are on your way to good health. And if you're not, we are here to get you there. So don't feel discouraged. Okay, I know it can be stressful eating. What we hear from our clients is that eating is expensive. It's but expensive now in terms of you buying it, but later on, if you do not eat those food, it will be expensive because it will cause you your health status, put you at a disadvantage of getting it wrong or having a optimal living that you can smile every day, but you're always in pain. So that would be expensive. And let us forget about the money. We can plant, and we don't need a few acres of land to plant. There are some mechanisms. You can reach out again to the Ministry of Agriculture to know how can I plant in a small space. So you plant on a wall, right? Hang a bag like a shoe. You know the bags that you put your shoes in. You can put soils in there, grow some lettuce, some celery, and you have food. Yes, so we can enjoy that and have a healthy lifestyle and get outside and get the vitamin D. And vitamin D, we see many of the chronic illnesses, including cancer, reduces our risk. So don't shade too much from that sun. Let it on your skin, on your face, your arms, your legs. Don't cover yourself too much. We are not living in the cold. Rain is falling, but you're not covering yourself too much. Let the sunlight enjoy your skin and let your skin use it with the addition of calcium-rich foods. So that's your green leafy vegetables. If you can tolerate dairy, then you can have that. And both would work together to give you optimal benefits.
Okay, wonderful. Dr. Thomas, let me come back to you. What are some of the signs that can indicate that someone is not enjoying good GI health?
So before you get in that, I was just kind of I'm listening to Ms. Bristol, and she mentioned about the sun exposure and stuff. And there is a causal link between, exposure to sunlight and reduction of colorectal cancer. Yeah. So I think we need to promote what we have naturally, and we don't get enough sunshine. Okay? Because we in-house, we go into a vehicle, then we go into a building. So we live, in the tropics, we're not really getting enough sunshine. So
right.
I'd like to sort of echo that. Yeah, but in terms of GI symptoms, which may, suspect that you may not be enjoying the best of health, and those symptoms really will depend on whether the possible upper or lower GI problem. And then you have some symptoms that are sort of general, but some of the general symptoms, they might be a bit, pointing to more advanced state of disease. So if we start from the top, to the bottom, I alluded earlier to the common notion of I have gas, or I've also read his stomach. Those are kind of terminology that is used, and when you have to explain what they mean by that, the doctor tell me that. Well, how did they find out that? And you get this sort of big things, and then people treat themselves, or the doctor may treat them, without them getting relief, and without saying, well, no, time to take it a step further, sort of thing. Okay? So you get general things where they might be very lethargic, not enough energy, they lose their appetite. They cannot enjoy a plate of food as they used to. They get, filled up very easily. We call it early satiety. They eat a small meal and, they're very bloated. So, they might be sort of belching excessively, for no known cause. And despite all that, they're using different remedies and they're not getting relief. So something is telling you that something isn't quite right, Once yet, if you start losing weight, then you should be overly concerned, you know. So you do get you that's one thing you can get instead of upper, we have difficulty swallowing it. Doesn't have to mean that something is terrible, but it requires attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. The in the small, I say in the pancreas, it be quite sort of subtle, and this thing, it can develop with almost, no symptoms. Sometimes the first symptom people get is back pain.
Back pain. Okay.
Yeah, they get back pain, and then when you investigate it, it's advanced. But depending on which part of the pancreas thing develop, you could get a swelling, in the abdomen, as a mass, or they might present with jaundice, or they might just have sort of vague symptoms of dyspepsia, just feeling a bit upset, some heartburns, sometimes you get symptoms where they just have itching, of the skin. So you can get some very, very non-specific symptoms, and it does require a detailed history and a high level of suspicion sometimes to pick up these things early. Yeah. The in the small intestine, they are not common, and sometimes these things are predisposed by other conditions, like chronic inflammatory bowel disease, and a lot of these things, so because they can be picked up early, they can be monitored, but sometimes they might just present as losing weight, not digesting very well, going to the toilet very often, having episodes of diarrhea, and so which a lot of times you just put down to, oh, I have a bug or something I ate, and because they come and they go.
Mm-hmm.
So people are not aware. The lower GI tract is one of them where we do have sort of established sort of guidelines. So those we don't need to wait to have any symptoms of ill health to check, because it is one of those conditions that we should do surveillance for. But in terms of symptoms, what tends to make people rush to the doctor is quite often when they see blood, when they go to the toilet. Unfortunately, a lot of times they get told, oh, it's just hemorrhoid. And it can go on for a few months before they get, diagnosed. But sometimes there's no blood. You might just have a change in your bowel. And the important thing is a change. Because if you've been going to the toilet once a week for most of your life, and then suddenly you start going twice and 3 times a week, which is a thing, you might think that, oh, things are working better now, but it may not be things working better. It might be something is not right.
Okay.
And vice versa. If you were going, every day or twice a day for most of your life, and you suddenly start going twice a week or once a week, and you haven't sort of changed your diet, it's not like you travel and because of that change of environment, there's a temporary change, then it's pointing to something may be wrong. It doesn't have to be wrong, but it may be wrong. And you should investigate it, So there's certain things which is not right. You're having abdominal distension for no obvious reason. You're passing excess weight, it is quite malodorous. You're seeing streaks of blood, you're seeing streaks of mucus, So anything that is not, quote unquote, normal for you is a sign to say that. But one of the most important sort of risk factors is just the aging process. If you live longer, you're more likely to get stuff.
Right.
So there are guidelines that says that, from the age of 45, we should do screening for colorectal cancers. we are in the Caribbean. We are in the process of trying to review and have guidelines for the Caribbean, because the guidelines of 45 years is in the Americas and in Europe. Previously, it was age 50. However, when it was age 50, there was a suggestion that blacks should start at 45 based on studies that was done. So the present thinking is that we should start at age 40 in the Caribbean. But it is something which is under discussion. And in the Caribbean, there are groups. A member of the Caribbean College of Surgeons, and we do have a colon cancer group in it. It is something that we have to discuss. But I think the other Dr. Nixon has any information on that. But I believe that the Caribbean, the hematology and oncology, they have, in principle, sort of agreed that screening for colon cancer should start at age 40. But I think this is what will happen as a statement for the region in the distant future.
Okay.
And that's outside of people having a family history or symptoms. If you have symptoms, then it doesn't really depend on your age. My youngest patient in Grenada is 22 with colon cancer.
Okay, wonderful. All right. One last question, and I'm coming to Dr. Nixon. Dr. Thomas, abdominal pain is probably one of the most common pains anybody have. And knowing us in Grenada, your belly's had to hurt you, and as you said earlier, it's gas. So you're going to probably go and boil a little spice with some ginger, and you're going to drink that. And it might go away, but it might come back. And a lot of times, I guess if we pay attention, we may feel or identify the little differences in the pains that we get, in our stomach and so. When should we decide, I should not just remain home and think it's gas. Let me go see my family practitioner.
So, number one, I just said, abdominal pain is common. You get some pain, you think it's that, you do your home remedy, it goes away, all well and good. If it doesn't go, or if it keeps coming back or it's getting worse, I think that's a sign to say, let me seek professional help. Yeah. It's very important that when people go to the professional with the abdominal pain, that the professional try to extract the details of the pain and don't accept, well, doc, it hurts, because to the layman, pain is pain. So, we have to take a little time to explain to them that all pain is not the same. And the details of the pain help us to try to analyze what could be causing it and what you can just simply drink some antacid or some spice, or, some apple cider vinegar, or, what other sort of remedies you may use, or what needs further investigation, or, you can use this. If you don't get rid of it, come and see me in 2 weeks, right? Or let me know anyway how things happen, because sometimes people don't go, or they go to another doctor and then they start all over, as opposed to getting reviewed by the same doctor who can probably take it a step further for them.
Right.
Yeah, but people just have to understand that all pain is not just pain.
Right.
But the details of the pain is a very, very important. Medicine is not magic, right? And we depend on people to explain themselves, and we have to help them. So so that they understand what they're actually experiencing. And by far and large, if we take time, people will explain themselves. You know, you don't have to have a very high IQ to explain yourself, because you can describe what you're feeling and try and quantify it, and, you know, ask questions so that, because something else might be happening with the pain that they don't link together.
Right.
So we have to sometimes extract that information, you know, out of them.
Right. So, Dr. Nixon, I'm coming to you now. One of the common things that are that's probably linked to a lot of conditions, and we're talking here what we refer to as sickness, stress, and we can get stress for. I mean, people are stressed out for a lot of different reasons, and so. How can stress, or how does stress impact our health, our gastrointestinal health? Yeah. Or maybe the other way, if we are not experiencing, or if we are not enjoying good GI health, how can that bring on some form of stress on the body?
All linked to your whole immune system, that part of your body, that part of your being that protects you from everything.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in the beginning we talk about immune system just being related to infectious diseases. Whether it's a virus, a bacteria, a rickettsia, whatever it is. Now we recognize stress particularly as changing your body's whole humoral system, how your body behaves generally, right? Mm-hmm. We know a lot of research has been put into this whole gut health recently, and you see it coming. And it's something people should read, you know, how the health of your gut relates to the rest of your wellness, okay? And so how the things we consume orally can change, modify your gut health, and subsequently what is likely to happen, right? Stress will create a change also in your immune system, how your immune system behaves. And we know, we've seen people who have had diseases or not translate because of stress into severe illness and eventually demise, death, okay? So it is important that we have mechanisms for dealing with our stress, because it is going to approach and affect how our immune system behaves.
Mm-hmm.
But before I go, a couple of things I want to follow up on what Dr. Thomas said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Belly pain. This belly pain thing, my belly hurting me. Yes, you could drink some. Maybe you shouldn't, but you could drink some ginger and some spice. A lime bud, go overboard, whatever you drink, right? Once, twice, the third time you go to the doctor. But I want to admonish my colleagues as well. Get into the habit of examining our patients, okay? Because sometimes we do not. My surgery professor taught me that if I didn't put my hand, I'm going to have to put my foot, meaning I have to be standing in the theater late in the night. And I'm sure Dr. Thomas can attest to that. Where somebody doesn't examine a patient properly, which is part of the things of diagnosing a patient. You listen, you ask questions, and you examine, and then you can do other things, an ultrasound, X-ray, whatever it is, a mammogram, a blood test, right? But you have to listen to what the patient says, but you also have to ask the patient questions. And he said, IQ is not important. Just say what it feel like. It feel like a big stone lying down on your belly. If you feel like somebody joking in your belly, just get as colloquial and as simple as you can. And patients say, yeah, how you know? Show me what it is. Take one finger and show me exactly where that pain or that discomfort. One finger. And patient turns, and we should know how to discern whether pain is up in your upper part of your tummy or on your lower part of your tummy, whether it's on the tip of your shoulder or down in the middle of your arm, right? We should be able to ask you to take one finger and joke where the pain is, okay? But it is important that we examine. And I'm telling patients, when you go to your doctor, after you tell him what it is, ask the doctor to touch you. Right? The Jamaicans get very upset if doctor don't sound them. He never uses trumpet. Right? We have to examination is one of the best ways of discerning what is going on with your patient. Sometimes you don't need to send for additional tests, because once you can examine the patient, you can probably determine, right, what is going on. But I wanted to talk about long before the pain as well, right? Long before the pain, we have to engage in screening and education of our population. They have to understand why it is important to get checked every year. We need to figure out what happens in your first decade of your life, what happens in your second decade, what happens in your third decade. Are we going to miss things? Yeah, we're going to miss a few things. But if we are doing screening of our patients on a regular basis, we will catch stuff early. If we're encouraging patients to go and get tested and stuff, yeah, there's some cancers that behave like fool, okay, and just fly up and take over your life and end your life. But the truth is, if we're encouraging screening of our population, right? Come, let me see what is going on. Let me look and make sure there's nothing there. And if there's anything there, just maybe early enough for us to act on it and prolong your life, right? And it doesn't mean that you're eating bad, but cancer is just one of those things that yes, we can figure out that there's a greater possibility if you smoke and you drink and you eat all the bad food, right? But some people don't have those things and they still have. So my advice to the population is that you get screened, okay? When you're doing your annual thing, women do their pap smears or whatever they're going to do, DNA, the HPV DNAs, whatever it is. Men, check your testicles, get your prostate checked, right? Or a child has abnormal pain, get an ultrasound done on the child, whatever it is, okay? Do your colonoscopy. And I agree with Daniel, probably 40, because it's funny. When I was in medical school, I saw people from the Caribbean who developed colon cancer in their 30s, males in their 30s. But like I said, when we set up a cancer registry, we'll have a better idea as to what happens in our environment. The other thing is in relation to screening and treatment and understanding, and cancer management being screening, doing education, first of all, screening and doing early diagnosis and being able to manage, being able to treat, whether surgically or using chemotherapeutic methods or radiotherapeutic methods, whatever it is, nutrition methods, whatever works for the condition that we're dealing with. Recently, there was a workshop, a Caribbean workshop, to develop an OECS cancer management policy. I think this is going to be very beneficial to the entire Caribbean, and it actually happened here. It is something that SGU has been working with we have a cancer platform. But I think it's very important that we have standards, because Daniel
Caribbean Cancer Portal.
The Caribbean Cancer Portal. Dr. Thomas tells you something, right? We cannot, all of us need to be guided by standard guidelines that are already evidence-based, so that our population doesn't have to deal with terminal cancer. I should not be seeing Dr. Thomas when I'm at the end of my life. I should be going to him for my colonoscopy, even without any symptoms. Those are the things we're talking about. But having guidelines for the entire region would be good. And again, if we have a registry where everybody who is diagnosed is put into that registry, is followed, we will have the commonalities and be able to understand how do Grenadian people, how do they manifest their disease? What works for them, what doesn't work for them? Because what probably work for, let's say, further high up, like a Hispanic population in the Dominican Republic, may not work. The diet is different to us. They have different genetic makeup. They have more Caucasian history a longer Caucasian history than we do. Or even the Cubans who have a large Caucasian population, right? Or the people who have a French history. How does it affect them as opposed to affect the Trinidadians who have Chinese and more Chinese and Indian history together with the Black population? So once we can figure out what happens, we can take greater precautions. We can have systems that tell us when do you screen, when do you not screen. Okay, what do you screen for? How do you screen? Which population for what? Because I think screening, education, first of all, like we talked tonight about what the crap that we eat, because we really eat foolishness, because it appears cheap. It is not cheap. Okay, it is not cheap at all, because when you consider the outcomes, it is not cheap. We talk about cancers tonight, but we haven't talked. We've been talking for the last 10 years about chronic diseases like hypertension and diabetes. Okay, malnutrition in our children, obesity in our children, and all the rest of it. All of which eventually probably dovetails into premature death, obesity and alcohol consumption dovetailing into, and poor nutrition dovetailing into cancers, etc. I'm saying we need to have standards that guide us, and each one of us, population, people in a community, must be educated, and we who give care should know how to guide our population in taking care of themselves so that we can prevent those disorders. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. So, look, we're almost out of time. We have about what, 8 minutes. Okay. So I have one final question, and I'm going to allow each of you to, answer. Charisse from a nutrition perspective, Dr. Thomas from the GI perspective, and Dr. Nixon, you can just wrap, with an overall thing. So, from listening to all three, it is clear that when it comes to cancer and preserving our wellness, the most important factor is prevention. Because, for example, listening to Dr. Thomas earlier, there are some cancers. One, in the Caribbean or in Grenada, we don't have the capacity to deal with it, period. Not even to provide the sort of hospice care in the last days, comfort. We don't even have that. So clearly, if we can prevent these things as much as possible, we are in a good place. So, Charisse, let's start with you in terms of prevention from a nutrition perspective. Your closing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So we are encouraging, and as part of the Food and Nutrition Council, people to eat local. Eat what you grow and grow what you eat. And that way we can have a healthy outcome. That is what we'll preach, and this is going to be forever. Avoid the ultra-processed foods, the alcohol consumption, avoid it completely. If you even reduce your intake, you're still at risk for developing cancers, because the slightest you started it, that have some implication. But you do reduce, and you can just reduce slightly on health outcomes. For the diet, just eat local, a variety, eat the rainbows, and increase your vegetable and fruit intake.
Right, wonderful. Dr. Thomas, our GI health is critical. It probably comprises the most organs. I mean, it includes the most organs, from the mouth, esophagus, liver, pancreas, intestines, rectum, you name it. Prevention and keeping them, functioning the way they ought to.
So it's important that the first thing, as Ms. Bristol said, what we consume. Our diet. If that fails, then the next step is, early detection. So we need to sort of recognize when something isn't right or when things change, and we need to understand that if we have similar symptoms to our friend or neighbor, we don't have the same problem.
Right.
Commonly, we like to say, well, this person had that, and then the doctor gave him that. We like to treat other people's medication for our sickness.
Right.
Yeah. So we have to try to avoid that. Okay. We have to recognize that as we get older, things are more likely to develop. So even without symptoms, we should do checks, and we as clinicians, we should encourage people to do checks. We should do checks ourselves. Okay? Because if we do a poll of physicians in Grenada, I don't know how many of us do annual checks. Okay? So we have to encourage our own to actually do checks. Because there are times when patients would ask you, doctor, have you ever had a colonoscopy? Doctor, have you had this? They will ask you. So you should be in a position to say, yes, I have. No, I didn't have, but, this is my plan. So because that encourages patients, right? Because they will very quickly tell you, why you asking me to do it if I feel fine, okay, right? The men are more difficult. The women are much more, keen about their health
definitely.
and checking. So I think we have more of a problem of men. My simple analogy is to ask them about their motor car, okay?
Yeah.
And I would ask, do you service your car?
Mm-hmm.
And I ask them why they service it. And they tell me they don't want it to break down. And then I say, well, so is it okay for you to break down? But not your vehicle.
I like it. I love it.
And then we usually sort of stop there, So then hopefully they sort of get the point that they don't need to break down to do checks.
Right.
Because we do not want our vehicles to break down. So it should not be okay for us to break down. Because the vehicle will still be there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
When the vehicle break down, we could replace it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So we need to do that. So as physicians as well, we need to recognize when, somebody is representing with the same problem. They might come with different symptoms, but it's the same problem. Dr. Nixon talk about you asked about stress on the gut, right? There are a lot of symptoms that can present with GI symptoms, which isn't always GI. We have to also sort of recognize that. People with migraine can present with abdominal, pain. People with allergies can present with GI pain. The people with anxiety can present with GI pain. People can present with heart problem, which is a GI problem. So you can also present with other conditions, which is actually GI, and you can with GI problem, which is not GI. So we have to be able to sort of recognize those things, and when in doubt, we can always ask each other. Dr. Nixon called me when she's ready, and she badmouthed me when she's ready, and she had to answer the phone. And I caught her one time. But we have to, feel comfortable to just call each other and just ask a question.
Yeah.
You don't always have to sort of refer a patient. You can just ask a question.
Yeah.
And so we can, so we have to sort of do that in the patient's interest. So the whole aspect of prevention or detection, I think it should start with us as professionals and then spill out to the wider community.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much. Dr. Nixon, our wellness, prevention.
So I want to say, I want to endorse something that Dr. Thomas said. Again, my favorite university professor, my surgical professor. I wonder why I don't do surgery, right? But remind us that there are no diseases, there are only patients, because everybody presents as they will present. So therefore, do not give me a blood pressure medication. I'm not taking your omeprazole, blah, blah, blah. And we should really discourage this among our patients. I want to talk more than prevention. I want to talk about integrative management, because I think that patients the population, people, I'm going to call them patients even if they're not ill. I think we all have a responsibility for making sure that we're healthy, we and our entire families. I think we need to educate ourselves. You know my favorite instrument, right? The phone. It's all there, or your tablet, whatever you use to seek information, it's all there. Feeding my family. There's a big thrust in Grenada currently for us to plant food, to grow what we eat, right? This lawn thing have to go out of style. You can use even a car space, right? Where we can fit a car to grow vegetables and grow stuff. It breaks my heart every time I drive through Grenada and see mango spoiling on the ground and people buying juice from a country that don't have no mango tree, buying mango juice, and it's really mango flavored water. Okay? Why our children are not taking a fruit to school? Why am I not taking a fruit bowl to my office as my thing when there's just so much around us? Why am I not just carrying a mango and going outside in my break time and have it as much? I do that, okay? The point I'm making is that I think we need to be very in tune with our environment and what is happening. Cancer is unfortunate, and it's even more unfortunate that it is the primary cause of death. In Grenada, a place where our favorite saying, that if you plant a buckle, it will grow. We have very fertile soil, right? So I think everybody should try and convert. I know the government is pushing a lot for people to plant and have food. You don't have to plant a whole acre of land, you know. Most of us don't have an acre of land, but we have a little piece by the side of the house, right? We have something where we can cut something, right? In other communities, in other countries, I've seen them have community gardens, but some of us here thief so much that nobody can plant anything. We think it belongs to us when somebody else plant. Because we thief. We have pretty larceny is a serious problem. So a lot of our fruits, especially like sour stuff, some things that are really good for us, the owners come in the night and take it like it's theirs. I would not tell people what to do. I know what I can do. I think we should really focus on, being in communities where we share information. We have the church, we have community groups, we have different agencies, we have food and nutrition councils. Go in and ask questions. I send all my diabetics for nutritional counseling because it is so very important. And how do you use what we grow? We have a lot of stuff here. We don't need to have apple and pear and plum that come in a box from foreign that we don't know how long it pick. All right? But there is mango, and then golden apple will come in November, and skin up soon come. They're just as good, right? And there's guavas, and there are other fruits that are around nationally. There's yam and banana and dasheen and stuff that we grow, right? A lot of people here grow their chickens. You can grow 6 chickens in your backyard, right? You can grow 6 chickens in your backyard. And of course, how we're going to prepare food is very important, okay? It's good. It's very important. We don't need to give our children sugar-sweetened beverages. And I'm dying for the day when we increase the alcohol consumption and smoking consumption to 21 years of age. Like the U.S. has brought up alcohol consumption minimum age to 21 years. I think we can do that too. I want to stick a plug here, and I'm going to do it as often as I can. Again, we did it last week. I'm going to ask parents to watch for your children vaping, because that's a gateway to tobacco consumption. Watch for your children vaping. It is not benign. It is not fun. We don't know whether vaping is going to lead to cancer because it's still a relatively new practice. Maybe it just will. Even if inhaling watermelon, what a shame if watermelon give you lung cancer. But I'm saying those are the things we need to do as a community. And Dr. Thomas mentioned, one of you mentioned, the fact that we're so resource limited. We need to use our common sense as a serious means of resource in order to make sure that our lives are healthy, that we practice the best lifestyle to prevent the diseases that we have control over. Okay? Those that we have control over. Vaccination of your children early will prevent, you have at birth, we give HPV, which prevents cancer of the liver. And not HPV, hepatitis B, right? Which will prevent cancer of the liver. And of course, HPV vaccines, which will prevent cancer of the cervix and a lot of other cancers like oral cancers, cancer of the rectum, and other tissues that look like that, mouth being oral and stuff. So those are 2 things we know that already prevent cancers. And like I said, we have to do it together. Listen for when we have policies. Listen for the education, because the information is going to be disseminated. Yeah, we say it over and over, but that's so that for the same reason that pastor uses the same Bible every week. You have to give the message over so people remember it.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Well, guys, I thank you so much for being here and sharing, such important information with us. To our listeners, I really hope that you paid attention and understand the importance of prevention, because if you prevent now, you would find that later on you won't have to be spending money or looking for money that you don't have. Let's protect our health. Our health is our wealth. Let's do that and make sure that we can live a long and enjoyable life. Yes? So thank you very much.
But one more thing, just one more thing. And because we have so many people from the diaspora visiting, I hope a lot of them listen to this program tonight. And please stop sending the thing in the barrel that's not good for us. It's costly, but it's not good for us. Okay? It's costly.
Yeah.
A lot of the canned foods and stuff are really just not good for our population. It might seem to fill a hole, but there are nutritious stuff that you can buy, not as expensive, that's not very expensive. And we try to placate our families, but let's placate them with healthy foods. Thank you. And thank you for all you do to keep us fed and mostly, comfortable.
Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Thomas, Charisse, Dr. Nixon, thank you also very much. Until next time, do have a good evening. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.